What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. In today's video, we're going to be continuing our custom interior project for the Lotus. In the last video, we started working on our double din dash, and it's coming along really well. Since that video, all I've done is I cut these MDF boards and we've bonded those together, so I still have to body work all of those into the dash, and we're going to work on that maybe a little bit today. My buddy Andrew will be making the original panel that we have right here. He's going to modify it to fit the double din, so we're obviously going to be getting rid of these humps and making it square. The original plan was to actually make a one-off piece, probably in carbon fiber, that we could sell to anybody that might be interested. And we might not be doing that at this time. However, he did say if anybody was really interested in getting a double din dash, if you like the way that this looks once we're all said and done, feel free to reach out, shoot me a message, and I can hook y'all up, and he's happy to make additional ones of these. Today's project, however, we're going to be fitting these Mercedes A-Class air vents, or at least starting the process of fitting those into our original panels. Since we deleted the two center air vents, we only have two panels to modify, one on either side of the car. I don't think it's going to affect the airflow inside of the car very much anyway. The AC system is not that great. We have done quite a bit to make it a little bit better, but I think just one air vent on either side. The interior is so small, it's going to be fine. So to make these fit, all we're going to do is we're going to trim around each of these holes. We're going to take off probably 1/4 inch of material. Andrew made us some of these trim rings. Now these fit around these new air vents perfectly. He got those measured, and so once these slide into place, they'll actually snap onto those rings. So after we've trimmed both of these, we're going to panel bond these onto the face of it. Of course, we're going to have to body work around it and clean it up a little bit to make it just a little nicer, but that should allow us to slide these new air vents into these holes once they're modified. I'm thinking that we might have a little bit of a problem with these holes. I think we'll probably have to trim a little bit here, hopefully not a whole bunch up top. However, since we're getting all of this upholstered and done once we're finished, even if we have to cut a little bit here, I think it'll be fine. Another problem I think we might have is the stock ducking that runs from the center of the dash over here on either side. It's hard plastic, and there's not a lot of room to modify it, so I think depending on how this fits in here after we've trimmed everything, we might need to replace it with some flexible air ducting, and that's not a big deal at all, and I think that will solve that problem pretty well. Okay, so these A-Class air vents, they're way too big to just do a simple modification and slide them in. It is going to take a little bit of work to get them all the way in there and also maintain the original functionality. So I'm going to use these rings that Andrew made us, and I'm going to lay these just on the face of both panels and just kind of line them up to where I think we need to make our cuts. After I got them about where I want them, we'll use the Sharpie, we'll trace all the way around, we'll cut them with the air saw, then we'll fit everything back into the car, see where else we might need to trim or what other modifications we might need to make. Okay, so I think I decided we're just going to follow basically the lip all the way around. I think that when the air vent is in here, it should sit pretty snug against all of that. We'll obviously have to body work it just a little bit, especially on the edges, I think. But that should give us enough clearance above and below to fit this oversized air vent into the housing. You can see this area is not too much to worry about. However, where this is, quite a bit wider than the stock air vent, I think this could give us some problems on the inside. And so we'll start off, I'm going to trim all the way around this. We'll slide it in and see what it looks like. Okay, so we're getting just a little bit closer. We have quite a bit bigger hole here than we had originally, and we're getting pretty close. We can now pop this almost all of the way in. We still do have a little bit of gap on this larger section of the new air vent. And so we're going to continue sanding, get this just a little bit wider, and we should be able to slide this right into place and then have a good idea about what to do next.
2 hours later.
All right, we're done trimming this piece, and the new air vents slide into place really well. They look awesome in there. I'm very, very happy with it. You can see a little bit of a gap here on the side, and we're gonna fix that by attaching this retainer ring to the face of the panel. We're gonna panel bond it into place, and once it's dry and it's in place, it's going to sit exactly where the air vent currently sits, and so it's going to have the same gap. Once it's dry and it's on there permanently, that will give us an opportunity to body work and fill that area in. That way, the air vent's going to sit flush against the panel and we won't have any gap at all. So now that both of those holes are cut and everything is about the right size, I went ahead and set this panel into place. And you can see there's a pretty big difference between the original hole on that firewall, or not really a firewall, but on that dash, and our new hole. And right here, this one showed up broken, and so I'm using it to test fit just because I can scratch this and drop it, and it's not that big of a deal. So whenever I test fit the air vent into place, you can see that it hits that aluminum dash back there, and it doesn't go quite all the way in. It looks like we have probably about half an inch or maybe an inch that it sticks out. And so to fix that, I'll trim about 1/4 of an inch all the way around. Maybe not quite all the way around, but I'll definitely take about 1/4 of an inch right here. I'll take the sander and we'll trim all this down into a little bit more of a circular shape and see if it goes in after we do that.
A few inches later.
Okay, we need to clean our cuts up and sand and do a few more things to make this pretty, but it looks like it's gonna work out just like I thought. That slides into place, opens and closes. So if it fits on the dash, then it absolutely will fit on that dash panel. And so I just wanted to make sure that this hole was just big enough to accommodate this so we could still open and close it. So it looks like it's gonna work just fine. So what we're gonna do next, we gotta make sure the other side is working exactly the same as this. We'll clean all of those cuts up, and then we need to start the body work process. We're gonna panel bond those little rings that we had made onto the plastic dashes. Once that's done, we can body work the rings onto the dash, and that will let the air vents slide in and out and lock around those little rings, and it will also let us fill in the little bit of gap that we had earlier when we first made these holes. So I think it's gonna look really, really pretty once we're all said and done. Okay, before I get too ahead of myself, I do want to double check everything just to make sure that everything does fit. So I've put the dash panel back on, and we're gonna slide our air vent into place, and it should just snap in. And man, even without the ring on there that we had made, even without this being on here yet, that's a pretty good fit. And it should move around a little bit. Okay, that's good. That means there's just enough movement back behind the dash for us to adjust it to the right angle that we want it to be at. We'll eliminate almost all of its movement once we put this ring onto the face of the dash. This is exactly the same diameter as the large inside part of this, so the air vent should slide all the way in and snap into place a little bit tighter than this. That's also going to let us fill these little gaps around the sides, and it's going to be pretty much perfect. I mean, gosh, it almost doesn't even need to be upholstered. It looks really, really good. All right, so we got both of those in there. It's looking really, really good. I'm so excited to have the interior coming together just like I envisioned it. We still have to do a little bit of work to make the double din dash, and today we're gonna wrap things up by doing some body work to both of these air vents, as well as body working over this MDF that we cut to cover up the center of the dash. So we're gonna put a little bit of panel bond down, do a little bit of body work, and call it a day. Okay, so I just prepped everything for some panel bond, and I used some instant adhesive to tack both of these little rings onto the dash panels. You can see that's about the same gap that we should have had whenever the air vents were slid in here without these rings. And so what we're going to do now is, since these are dry and tacked on, I'm going to take the panel bond and we're going to use it to fill these holes on either side of the rings. Once that dries and I can body work and make everything smooth, those air vents should slide right into both of these without any gap. It should sit perfectly flush. Alright, last step of the night. What I've done here is I tacked on these rings with just a little bit of instant adhesive. That lets me have the rings exactly where I want them without them moving at all. And now I've taped all the way around the perimeter, and we can see where these gaps are. And if you remember earlier in the video, whenever we set the air vents themselves into these panels, there was a gap on both sides, and that's just because of the shape of this and the way everything fit together. So now that these rings are tacked on and we have some tape placed here, we can use the panel bond to fill both of these sides. And that's not only going to hold them in place really, really strongly, it's also going to fill these gaps and give us an opportunity to body work, make this really, really smooth, and turn these two pieces into one solid piece that's going to look just perfect and factory when we're all said and done. Alright, these are all panel bonded. They're not pretty, but after we sand them and body work them down a little bit tomorrow, they will be pretty. Looks like it's going to do exactly what we want it to, make those air vents fit nice and flush without any gap at all. So I think that about wraps up this video. Hopefully in the next one we have a major update with both the doubled in and the air vents. Once both of those projects are wrapped up, the entire interior, including the seats, are going to the upholstery shop to get totally rewrapped. Hopefully the interior looks really, really sharp when we're all said and finished. I'm really excited to be right at the end of my interior project. This is basically my dream interior for this car. I never thought I was going to be doing these two projects. It was always in the back of my mind, like, wouldn't it be cool if, and we just happen to, you know, want to do it this winter, this fall, and so I'm really, really excited to be nearing the end of this project. I really appreciate everybody as you've been following along with this, and we'll see y'all next time.